9-year-old Marcus Chin wasn't supposed to overhear anything that morning. He was simply clearing dishes at his mother's roadside cafe on the outskirts of Riverside, the kind of establishment where truck drivers grabbed quick meals and regulars knew to arrive before sunset. His mother, Linda, ran the place alone, or more precisely, the place consumed her entire existence. The cafe represented everything they possessed, a cramped storage room where they both slept, and barely sufficient income to maintain basic operations. Every Tuesday morning, without fail, 3 men arrived. They never ordered meals. They collected what they termed business insurance fees. Linda complied, trembling hands counting bills, because refusal wasn't an option she could afford. Marcus recognized their faces intimately. He knew their voices, their patterns. That particular morning, when they huddled in the rear corner booth, discussing their scheme, he understood precisely whom they were targeting. The ringleader called himself Tony. Lanky, sharp-featured, perpetually dressed in an imitation leather jacket that screamed desperation for intimidation. He hunched forward, speaking quietly, yet Marcus caught fragments while sanitizing the adjacent table. Target arrives at noon. Believes he's conducting a legitimate motorcycle sale. We finalize paperwork. I exit, send the signal. The crew grabs him, loads him into the transport. Simple operation. One associate chuckled softly. What about retaliation from his organization? Another questioned. Exactly the objective. Tony responded coldly. We eliminate their leader. We establish dominance. Either they abandon Riverside, or we escalate consequences. Marcus froze. His cleaning cloth gripped tightly. He'd observed the Iron Riders previously, cruising through town in synchronized formation, engines thundering, leather vests adorned with patches commanding respect. They bothered nobody. They collected nothing. They simply existed, unabashedly visible. These men despised them for that visibility. Marcus glanced toward his mother manning the counter, pouring coffee for a trucker. Exhaustion marked her features. Her movements seemed mechanical, automated by survival necessity. She remained oblivious. She existed in perpetual survival mode. The conspirators continued plotting. Specific details emerged. The motorcycle listing posted online, the scheduled meeting time, the fabricated buyer interest, the dark van positioned 3 blocks distant. Marcus's chest constricted. He desperately wanted intervention, but who would listen? His mother would insist he avoid involvement. Law enforcement ignored people in their situation. At 9 years old, he remained invisible in a society that overlooked children like him. So he maintained silence. He observed. He waited. At 11:50, a motorcycle's distinctive rumble penetrated the morning stillness. Deep, powerful, unmistakable. Marcus's pulse accelerated. He observed through the window as a rider dismounted a midnight blue cruiser, boots striking pavement with authority. Tall, powerfully built, wearing a leather vest, displaying the Iron Rider's emblem across the shoulders. His name was Daniel Reeves, though Marcus hadn't learned that yet. All Marcus comprehended was this man was walking directly into an ambush. Daniel entered the cafe. The overhead bell announced his arrival. Tony immediately stood, artificial smile plastered across his features, extending his hand in false greeting. You must be selling the motorcycle, Tony offered smoothly. That's correct, Daniel confirmed. His voice remained calm, controlled. He accepted the handshake and settled into the booth opposite Tony. Marcus edged closer, pretending to wipe down a neighboring table. His hands trembled uncontrollably. The trap was set. Time was running out, and only Marcus knew what was coming next. Will Marcus find the courage to warn a complete stranger? Or will fear keep him silent? Stay with us to discover what happens when a child must make an impossible choice. Excellent condition on that bike, Tony remarked, feigning expertise. I verified the registration. Documentation appears legitimate. Ready to complete the transaction immediately. Daniel nodded acknowledgement. Payment method. Cash transaction, Tony confirmed, producing a thick envelope and placing it prominently on the table. 13,000. Count it if you'd like verification. Daniel didn't bother counting. His eyes studied Tony instead, reading him the way experience teaches survival instincts, cataloging inconsistencies, measuring authenticity. Transfer paper were prepared. Daniel inquired. In my vehicle, Tony replied, rising from the booth. 2 minutes. I'll retrieve everything and we'll finalize. Marcus's stomach plummeted. This was the signal. Tony was exiting to alert his accomplices waiting outside. The boy's eyes darted toward the window. 2 men leaned casually against a black van across the street, pretending disinterest, but clearly waiting. Tony moved toward the exit. Time seemed to decelerate. Marcus's mind raced frantically. Without intervention, the biker would vanish. And when the Iron Riders came searching for their missing leader, this cafe, his only home, would become ground zero in a violent conflict. He didn't analyze. He simply acted. Marcus crossed the cafe in 5 rapid steps. Daniel looked up, surprised to find the child standing beside his booth. Marcus leaned close enough that only Daniel could possibly hear. His voice emerged as a whisper, tight with terror. Leave immediately. It's an ambush. They're planning to kidnap you. Daniel's expression remained neutral, but something shifted behind his eyes. He studied Marcus for an extended moment, then glanced through the window at the waiting van. Back to Marcus. The boy's complexion was pale, his hands visibly shaking, but his eyes conveyed absolute seriousness. Complete honesty. Daniel reached into his pocket, extracting his phone. 1 text message, 4 words, situation compromised. Respond immediately. Marcus stepped backward. His heart pounded so violently, he imagined everyone could hear its thunder. Tony remained outside, phone pressed to his ear, back turned toward the cafe. Daniel stood slowly, deliberately calm and controlled. He retrieved the cash envelope, tucked it inside his jacket, and walked purposefully toward the exit. Outside, Tony pivoted. His manufactured smile faltered upon seeing Daniel approaching. Problem. Tony's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Where are you going? Plans changed, Daniel stated simply. What? Tony's voice sharpened. We had an agreement. Daniel offered no explanation. He swung his leg over the motorcycle, ignited the engine. The sound became a roar, a warning, a declaration of refusal. Tony stepped forward aggressively, but before he could verbalize another protest, the street filled with approaching engines. 6, 8, 10 motorcycles, all Iron Riders converging from both ends of the block simultaneously. They surrounded the cafe like a fortified wall of leather and chrome machinery. Tony's face drained of color completely. The 2 men positioned by the van scrambled toward the vehicle's interior, but the motorcycles blocked every escape route. One of the riders, a woman with a pronounced scar crossing her left cheek, dismounted and walked directly toward Tony with measured, intimidating steps. Something you want to explain? She demanded. Tony stammered incoherently. This is a misunderstanding. Absolutely, she agreed coldly. You misunderstood who you were threatening. Daniel looked back toward the cafe. Through the window, he spotted Marcus standing beside the booth, eyes wide, watching the confrontation unfold. Their gazes locked briefly. Daniel gave a single, deliberate nod of acknowledgement. The boy had saved his life. Tony and his associates didn't attempt further confrontation. They retreated to their van and departed rapidly, tires screeching. The Iron Riders didn't pursue. No pursuit was necessary. The message had been delivered with absolute clarity. Inside the cafe, Linda stood behind the counter, frozen in confusion and dawning horror. Marcus remained in the middle of the floor, still trembling from adrenaline. Daniel killed his engine and walked back inside. He stopped directly in front of Marcus. What's your name, son? Marcus, the boy whispered. You've got serious courage, Marcus. But courage always comes with a price. What will Tony do when he realizes a 9-year-old boy destroyed his plans? The answer will shock you. The pounding on the door came the following morning. Linda was wiping tables when she heard it. 3 aggressive impacts that made the windows rattle. The cafe wasn't officially open. Dawn had barely broken across the horizon. Marcus still slept in their small back room, the cramped space with water-stained ceiling tiles and the second-hand mattress they'd purchased 4 years ago. She froze mid-motion, cleaning cloth suspended in her grip, staring at the door. Tony stood visible through the glass. 2 associates flanked him menacingly. Their expressions had hardened, No pretense of civility remained. Linda's hands began trembling. She'd been dreading this moment since yesterday, since Marcus had whispered that warning, since everything had irrevocably changed. She unlocked the door reluctantly. The bell chimed as Tony pushed inside forcefully. "Morning, Linda," he said. His voice maintained surface calm, but an unmistakable edge lurked beneath, sharp, threatening. "We're not open yet," she responded quietly. "Not here for breakfast," Tony replied dismissively. He walked past her, eyes scanning the cafe's interior systematically. The other two men remained positioned by the entrance, effectively blocking it. "We experienced some difficulties yesterday. You aware of what happened?" Linda's throat constricted painfully. "I don't know what you're referencing." "Really?" Tony stopped, pivoted to face her directly. "Because it occurred right here in your establishment. A business transaction went catastrophically wrong, and I'm attempting to determine how information leaked." Linda remained silent. Her mind raced frantically. She thought about the business card Daniel Reeves had left on her counter. She concealed it in the register beneath the cash tray, where she kept Tony's weekly protection payment. $200 every Tuesday, for 3 years. Money she couldn't spare. Money that should have purchased stove repairs, roof maintenance, new shoes for Marcus instead of the undersized ones he wore without complaint. But she paid because non-payment meant escalated consequences. Shattered windows, stolen inventory, threats that prevented sleep. Tony advanced closer. "See, someone warned that biker. Someone revealed our operation was a setup. I need to know who." "I didn't witness anything," Linda said, voice barely audible. "I didn't ask about witnessing," Tony corrected coldly. "I asked who provided the warning." Linda's heart hammered violently. She couldn't betray Marcus. She absolutely would not. "I don't know," she insisted weakly. Tony studied her face intently, then smiled slow, cold, predatory. "You have security cameras installed here?" Linda's stomach dropped sickeningly. She did maintain cameras, 2 inexpensive units installed after a break-in 6 years previous. She'd nearly forgotten their existence. "I want to review the footage," Tony demanded. "I'm not obligated to show you anything," Linda protested, though her voice cracked, betraying her fear. Tony's smile widened menacingly. "Correct, you're not obligated. However, if you refuse, I'll assume you're concealing evidence, which creates significant problems for you. Serious problems." Linda's hands trembled violently. She considered refusing, maintaining her position, but she understood Tony's methods intimately. He never requested twice. "Fine," she whispered in defeat. She led him to the cramped back office, barely accommodating a desk and filing cabinet. The security system was outdated, self-installed years ago. She accessed yesterday's footage, hands shaking so severely she struggled operating the mouse. Tony leaned over her shoulder invasively. The timestamp read 11:53 a.m. The camera showed Daniel Reeves entering, sitting down. The conversation, the cash envelope, Tony standing and walking toward the door, and then Marcus, small and quick, moving across the floor, leaning close to Daniel, whispering urgently. Tony's jaw muscles clenched visibly. He watched silently for a long moment, studying the frozen image of the boy captured in that moment of bravery. "That's your son," Tony stated flatly. Linda's breath caught painfully. He didn't understand what he was doing. "He's 9 years old." "He knew exactly what he was doing," Tony snapped. "Your son cost me substantial money yesterday. Cost me reputation. Now I've got the Iron Riders monitoring my operations because of him." "Please," Linda whispered desperately. "He's just a child." "Yeah," Tony agreed coldly. "A child who needs to learn when to keep silent." Tony's next words will force Linda to make an impossible choice: her son's safety or everything she's built. But what she doesn't know is that Daniel Reeves is already making plans of his own. Tony walked back into the main cafe area. Linda followed, panic rising in her chest like floodwater. Marcus remained asleep in the back room. If Tony went back there, Tony stopped at the counter, leaning against it with false casualness, but his eyes remained cold, calculating. "Here's the arrangement," he began. "You have 48 hours to vacate Riverside completely. You, the boy, everything gone. Linda's eyes widened in disbelief. This is my home. I can't just. You can, Tony interrupted sharply. And you will. Because if you don't, I'll return and torch this establishment to the foundation with you inside. The words struck her like physical blows. Linda felt the floor tilting beneath her feet. This cafe wasn't merely her business. It represented everything. Her income, her shelter, the only roof sheltering her and Marcus, the cramped room where they slept, where she tucked him in nightly and promised better days ahead. Without the cafe, she possessed nothing. No savings, no family support, no contingency plan. She barely generated sufficient income to maintain utilities and pay Tony's weekly extortion. No safety net existed. You can't do this, she protested, voice breaking. This place is everything I have. If I lose it, then you should have considered that before your son interfered where he didn't belong, Tony said coldly. He pushed away from the counter, moving toward the exit. 48 hours, Linda. Don't make me return. The door swung shut behind him. The bell chimed, cheerful and mockingly incongruous. Linda stood frozen, staring at the empty cafe. Her hands continued trembling uncontrollably. Her chest felt constricted, making breathing difficult. She thought about the bills stacked on her desk, the building rent she owed, the supplier who'd ceased deliveries because she was 3 months behind, the utility company threatening disconnection repeatedly. She thought about Marcus, about the life she desperately tried to build for him in this deteriorating cafe on Riverside's edge. It wasn't much, but it belonged to them, and now it was being taken away. Marcus appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes sleepily. Mom, who was here? Linda looked at her son. His hair stuck up at odd angles. He wore yesterday's shirt because she hadn't managed laundry. His face remained open, innocent, unaware of what his courage had cost them. Nobody important, she lied. Get ready for school. But Marcus didn't move. He'd heard voices, glimpsed the men through the door crack. Was it them? The men from yesterday? Linda didn't respond. She couldn't find words. She simply turned away, gripping the counter's edge, trying to maintain composure. Marcus's voice became small, uncertain. Did I do something wrong? Linda's heart shattered. She crossed the cafe and knelt before him, hands on his shoulders. No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. You were brave. Then why are you scared? Because bravery doesn't pay rent, she wanted to say. Because the world doesn't protect 9-year-old boys who do the right thing. Because we're alone, and we've always been alone, and now we're losing everything. But she didn't say any of that. She simply pulled him close and held him tightly. The remainder of the day passed in a dissociative fog. Linda opened the cafe as usual, served regular customers, poured coffee, took orders, smiled when expected, but her mind remained elsewhere. She kept replaying Tony's ultimatum. 48 hours. She didn't own a vehicle, couldn't afford bus tickets, had nowhere to go. She'd lived in Riverside for 9 years, since Marcus's birth. This cafe represented the only stability they'd ever known. As sunset approached, she'd reached her decision. They'd leave tonight, pack what they could carry, and simply disappear. Perhaps head to Sacramento, maybe San Diego, somewhere large enough to vanish into. She retrieved an old duffel bag from the closet and began filling it methodically. Clothes, Marcus's school notebooks, the photograph of her and Marcus from 3 years ago, the only one she possessed. Her hands moved automatically, numb and mechanical. She was folding Marcus's jacket when she heard the unmistakable rumble of motorcycles outside. Her blood turned ice cold. She rushed to the window. For motorcycles parked out front, iron riders. She recognized the woman with the scar. And prominently in front, Daniel Reeves. Linda's hands clenched involuntarily. How did you? I understand Tony's methods, Daniel explained. He came here this morning, correct? Saw your security footage, issued threats. Linda remained silent. She didn't need to confirm. Daniel approached the counter. What exactly did he say? He told me to leave, Linda said quietly. 48 hours, or he destroys this place. Daniel nodded slowly, as though he'd anticipated this. And you believed him? Of course I believed him. Linda said, her voice rising emotionally. You don't understand what these men are capable of. I've been paying them for 3 years, every single week. $200 I can't afford. And if I don't pay, they make things difficult. They damage property. They frighten away customers. And now my son's a target because he helped you. Linda thinks running is her only option. But Daniel has a plan that will either save everything or put them in even greater danger. What happens next will change their lives forever. Daniel's expression remained unchanged. How much do you generate here on a profitable week? Linda blinked in confusion. What? How much revenue? I don't see how that's relevant. Answer the question, Daniel insisted firmly. Linda's jaw tightened defensively. Maybe $700. On exceptional weeks. Most weeks closer to $500. And your expenses? Rent's $900 monthly. Utilities another $250. Supplies maybe $400 if I'm fortunate. Plus Tony's cut. Her voice fractured. After paying everyone, there's barely enough remaining to feed my son. Daniel remained silent momentarily. Then he said, You understand why Tony wants you gone? Linda shook her head. Because your son embarrassed him, Daniel explained. A 9-year-old child dismantled his scheme and ruined it. Tony can't permit that to stand. But this isn't about you personally. It's about control. If you run, he wins. He'll replicate this pattern with the next person, then the next. I don't care about the next person, Linda said, voice trembling. I care about my son. This cafe is everything we have. If something happens to it, nothing will happen to it. Daniel interrupted. But you need to trust me. I don't even know you, Linda protested. No, Daniel agreed. But your son did. He trusted his instincts. Perhaps you should too. Linda studied him, searching his face for uncertainty, some indication of doubt, but found nothing. Only steady, unwavering resolve. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Mr. Reeves? Daniel turned, his expression softening noticeably. Hey, Marcus. Are you here because of the bad men? Marcus asked directly. Daniel nodded. Yeah, but don't worry. They won't bother you anymore. How do you know? Because I won't allow them to, Daniel stated simply. Marcus looked at his mother, then back at Daniel. Are you going to stay? Daniel glanced at Linda. That depends on your mother. Linda closed her eyes. Every instinct commanded her to run, pack up, take Marcus, disappear completely. But another part of her, the part exhausted from running, tired of constant fear, tired of paying men like Tony just to survive, wanted desperately to believe him. If I stay, she said slowly, carefully, and Tony returns. He will, Daniel confirmed. Tomorrow, possibly the day after. When he does, we'll be prepared. Linda's voice dropped to barely a whisper. What if you're not? Daniel met her eyes steadily. Then you contact me, and I'll ensure I am. He extracted the same business card from his pocket and placed it on the counter again. Keep this accessible. If anything happens, anything at all, you use it. Linda picked up the card. Her hand still trembled, though less intensely than before. Daniel looked at Marcus. You did well, Marcus. Really well. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Marcus nodded, a small smile breaking through his fear. Daniel turned toward the exit, but Linda's voice stopped him. Thank you. He looked back. You don't owe me anything. Yes, Linda said quietly. I do. Daniel nodded once. Then he walked out. The motorcycles roared to life outside, and then they were gone, leaving only the fading echo of engines. Linda stood in the empty cafe, card clutched in her hand, heart still racing. She looked at Marcus. He was watching her expectantly, waiting for her to say something, to tell him everything would be okay. She took a deep breath. Go to bed, sweetheart. Are we leaving? Marcus asked. Linda looked around the cafe. The cracked vinyl booths, the coffee-stained counter, the flickering neon sign outside that cost $50 monthly to keep illuminated. It wasn't much, but it was theirs, the only home they had. No, she said quietly. We're staying. Marcus's face lit up with relief. He ran to her, wrapping his arms around her waist tightly. Linda held him close, closing her eyes. She didn't know if she'd made the right choice. Didn't know if Daniel Reeves could genuinely protect them. But for the first time in 3 years, she felt like she wasn't facing this alone. That night, as she locked the doors and extinguished the lights, she didn't pack a bag, didn't plan an escape route. She simply went to the small back room, tucked Marcus into bed, and lay down beside him. Because tomorrow, Tony was returning. And this time, she wasn't running. The next 24 hours will determine everything. Tony is coming back with reinforcements. Daniel has a plan. And Marcus will learn that standing up for what's right sometimes means standing in the line of fire. Don't miss what happens next. Morning arrived too rapidly. Linda woke before dawn, heart already pounding. She hadn't slept. Every external sound made her jump. Every passing vehicle felt like Tony returning early. She rose, prepared coffee, and waited. Marcus emerged from the back room, rubbing his eyes. Is today the day? Linda nodded. She didn't trust herself to speak. Are the bikers coming? He asked. I don't know. Linda admitted honestly. Daniel had promised they'd be ready, but she hadn't heard from him. No call, no message, nothing. She opened the cafe at 6, maintaining routine. A few regulars trickled in, elderly men ordering their customary breakfasts they'd been ordering for years. They remained oblivious to what was approaching, unaware that in hours their quiet morning establishment might become a battleground. Linda poured coffee, hands trembling. She kept checking the clock, the door, the street outside. At 10 o'clock, the rumble of motorcycles filled the air. Linda's chest tightened painfully. She looked through the window. 7 motorcycles pulled up, parking in formation out front. Iron riders. Daniel led them. He dismounted and entered, the others following. At 10 o'clock, the rumble of motorcycles filled the air. Linda's chest tightened painfully. She looked through the window. 7 motorcycles pulled up, parking in formation out front. Iron riders. Daniel led them. He dismounted and entered, the others following. The regulars went silent, staring. Several stood and departed without finishing their meals, leaving cash on tables. Linda didn't blame them. Daniel nodded acknowledgement toward her. We need to talk. Linda wiped her hands on her apron and followed him to a corner booth. The other riders dispersed throughout the cafe, appearing casual, yet distinctly alert. The woman with the scar positioned herself by the window, eyes monitoring the street. Tony's coming today, Daniel said. Probably around 1 o'clock. That's his preferred time for confrontations. Lunch rush. Maximum witnesses. Creates public spectacle. Linda's throat felt dry. What are you planning to do? We'll be present, Daniel stated simply. When he arrives, we'll communicate. If he chooses to walk away, he walks away. If he doesn't, he paused. We'll handle it. Handle it how? Linda's voice was barely audible. Daniel leaned forward. Linda, I need you to understand something. Tony's been operating protection rackets in Riverside for 4 years. He's got half the businesses in this district paying him. Law enforcement knows. They don't intervene. He's cautious. Doesn't leave evidence. Doesn't cross lines that result in arrest. Then how do you stop him? You make it not worth his effort, Daniel explained. You demonstrate that targeting you costs more than it's worth. And you ensure everyone watching understands that clearly. Linda felt nauseous. You're talking about violence. I'm talking about making a statement, Daniel corrected. Tony has maybe 8 men, perhaps 10. We have more. And we have something he doesn't. What's that? A genuine reason to be here, Daniel said. He's here for money, for control. We're here because your son saved my life. That matters significantly. Linda looked at Marcus, sitting at the counter, pretending not to listen. What if someone gets hurt? Someone might, Daniel admitted honestly. But it won't be you. And it won't be him. Linda desperately wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe Daniel could control this situation. But fear had a way of making everything seem impossible. One of the riders, a man with graying hair and thick beard, approached the table. Daniel, we have a problem. Daniel stood immediately. What is it? 4 of Tony's people just arrived. They're in a sedan across the street, watching. Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked at Linda. Keep the cafe operating. Act normal. Don't let them think anything's different. Linda wanted to protest, wanted to close everything down and hide, but Daniel's expression stopped her. Trust me, Daniel said firmly. And then he was gone, walking outside with the others. Linda stood frozen momentarily. Then she forced herself to move, to pour coffee, to take orders, to pretend everything was fine. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Outside, Daniel crossed the street purposefully. The sedan didn't move. 4 men sat inside, watching him approach. He stopped at the driver's window, tapped on the glass firmly. The window rolled down. The driver was young, mid-20s, attempting to project toughness. "Can I help you?" the driver asked with false confidence. "You're in the wrong neighborhood," Daniel stated calmly. "Public street," the driver retorted. "We can sit wherever we want." "Certainly," Daniel agreed. "But if you're here to deliver Tony a message, you can skip it. Tell him we're already here, and we're not leaving." The driver's smirk faded. He glanced at the other men in the vehicle, then back at Daniel. "Tony's not afraid of you." "Good," Daniel said. "Tell him to come say that personally." The driver hesitated. Then he rolled up the window abruptly. The car started and pulled away, tires screeching slightly as it turned the corner. Daniel watched them disappear. Then he walked back to the cafe. Inside, Linda stood by the counter, knuckles white as she gripped the edge. "What did they want?" she asked anxiously. "To see if we were bluffing," Daniel explained. "Now they know we're not." "So what happens now?" "Now," Daniel said, "we wait. The waiting is almost over. At 1 o'clock, Tony will arrive with everything he has. Daniel has positioned his riders. Linda has made her choice to stand her ground, and Marcus will witness whether courage or fear wins the day. The final confrontation is about to begin." The minutes crawled past with agonizing slowness. The cafe was nearly deserted. Only 2 truckers remained, oblivious to the mounting tension. The Iron Riders sat strategically throughout the space, waiting. Daniel positioned himself near the entrance. The woman with the scar, her name was Sarah, remained by the window, maintaining constant surveillance. Linda kept working mechanically, wiping tables that were already spotless, refilling coffee that didn't need refilling. Anything to keep moving, to avoid thinking about what was approaching. At 12:45, Marcus tugged on her apron urgently. "Mom." She looked down at him. His face had gone pale. "Yes, sweetheart." "Are we going to be okay?" Linda knelt down, hands on his shoulders. She wanted to lie, to tell him everything would be fine. But Marcus was too perceptive. He'd witnessed too much already. "I don't know," she said honestly. "But Mr. Reeves is here, and he's going to do everything possible to keep us safe." Marcus nodded slowly. "I'm scared." "Me too," Linda whispered. She pulled him close, holding him tight. At precisely 1 o'clock, the black van pulled up outside. Linda's heart stopped. She recognized it immediately. The same van from 3 days ago. The one Tony's men had been waiting beside when Marcus warned Daniel. Tony stepped out, flanked by 6 men. He looked calm, confident, as though this were merely a routine business call. Daniel stood. The other Iron Riders moved, positioning themselves near the door, the windows, the exits, not blocking anything, just present, visible, unmistakable. Tony pushed open the door. The bell chimed. He surveyed the cafe, taking in the scene comprehensively. His eyes landed on Daniel, and he smiled coldly. "Well, this is unexpected," Tony remarked. "Tony," Daniel said flatly. "No greeting, no pleasantries. Didn't expect to find you here," Tony said, walking further inside. His men remained positioned by the door. "Thought you'd be smart enough to stay out of other people's business." "This became my business when you threatened Linda and her son," Daniel stated. Tony's smile didn't waver. "I didn't threaten anyone. I made a suggestion. Leave town. Fresh start. Better for everyone involved." "She's not leaving," Daniel said firmly. "That's her choice," Tony replied. He glanced at Linda, who stood behind the counter with Ethan pressed against her side. "But choices have consequences." "Yes," Daniel agreed. "They do. The atmosphere in the cafe shifted, tightened perceptibly. Everyone could feel the tension escalating. The two truckers at the counter quickly threw down cash and left hastily. The door swung shut behind them. Tony took a step closer to Daniel. "You really want to do this over some waitress and her kid?" "She's not just some waitress," Daniel said. "And he's not just some kid. He saved my life. That means something." "Maybe to you," Tony said. "But to me, it just means he interfered where he didn't belong. And now you're doing the same." Daniel didn't move, didn't blink. "You've been running your operation in this town for 4 years," Daniel said, "taking money from people who can't afford it, intimidating them, hurting them. Nobody stopped you because it was easier to look away. And you think you're going to stop me?" Tony's voice was mocking now. "I think you're going to stop yourself," Daniel said, "because you're smart enough to recognize when a fight isn't worth it." Tony laughed, sharp, humorless. "You've got 7 people. I've got an entire network. You think this ends here?" "It does if you walk away," Daniel said. "Right now. No one gets hurt. No one contacts law enforcement. You just leave Linda alone and move on." Tony's smile faded. "And if I don't?" Daniel's voice dropped. "Then we ensure everyone in Riverside knows that Tony Marchetti couldn't handle a 9-year-old kid and a biker who wouldn't back down. Word spreads quickly. People stop being scared. Your entire operation collapses." For the first time, Tony's confidence cracked visibly. Just briefly, but it was there. He looked around the cafe, at the Iron Riders watching him intently, at Linda and Marcus, at Daniel standing calm and immovable. Then he looked at his men by the door. "We're leaving," he said abruptly. One of them stepped forward. "Boss, I said we're leaving," Tony snapped. He turned back to Daniel. "This isn't finished." "Yes," Daniel said. "It is." Tony stared at him for a long moment. Then he walked to the door. His men followed. The van doors slammed. The engine started. They drove away. The cafe was completely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Linda's legs gave out. She sank onto a stool behind the counter, hands covering her face. Marcus climbed up next to her, wrapping his arms around her. Daniel walked over. "You okay?" Linda looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "Is it really over?" "For now," Daniel confirmed. "Tony's not coming back. Not here. Not for you." "How do you know?" "Because he'd lose too much," Daniel explained. "His reputation, his control. He'll move on. Find easier targets." Linda wanted to believe him, desperately wanted to feel relief, but all she felt was complete exhaustion. Tony walked away this time. But will he stay away? And what price did this confrontation really cost? The answer will surprise you, because Daniel's about to make an offer that will change everything. 3 days passed without incident. No phone calls, no threats, no black vans circling the block. The Iron Riders kept their promise. 2 of them remained nearby, rotating shifts, maintaining vigilance. On the 4th night, Linda allowed herself to exhale. She closed the cafe at 8, locked the doors, and returned to the back room where Marcus was already sleeping. She sat on the bed's edge, watching him. His face looked peaceful. For the first time in days, he resembled a normal 9-year-old child. Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe Tony really was gone. She was brushing her teeth when she heard the crash. Glass shattering. Loud. Immediate. Linda's heart stopped. She dropped the toothbrush and ran to the front. The cafe's front window was completely destroyed. Glass shards covered the floor, glittering under the dim overhead lights. A brick sat in the middle of the debris. A note was wrapped around it with rubber bands. Linda's hand shook as she retrieved it, unfolded it. "You should have left when you had the chance." Her stomach dropped sickeningly. She grabbed her phone and dialed Daniel. It rang once, twice. "Linda." His voice was alert, awake. "They came back," she said, voice breaking. "They destroyed my window. There's a note." "Lock yourself in the back room," Daniel commanded. "Right now. Don't open the door for anyone except me." "Daniel." "Do it. I'm on my way." The line went dead. Linda ran to the back room. Marcus was sitting up, eyes wide. Mom, what was that sound? It's okay, baby, Linda lied. She locked the door, wedged a chair under the handle. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel, for minutes. Stay inside. Linda sat on the floor, pulling Marcus close. Her mind raced frantically. Tony hadn't let it go. He'd waited, watched, and now he was returning to finish what he'd started. Outside, engines roared. Not 1 or 2, 15, maybe 20. The sound filled the street, deep and thunderous. The Iron Riders had arrived. Linda heard voices, boots on pavement. Then she heard something else. More engines, different, rougher. Tony's men. Linda's chest tightened painfully. She held Marcus tighter. James's voice carried through the broken window. You made a mistake returning here, Tony. Tony's voice answered, cold and sharp. You made a mistake thinking I'd let this go. You had your chance to walk away, Daniel said. I'm done walking, Tony replied. And then it erupted. Linda didn't witness it, but she heard it, shouting. The sound of impact, bodies hitting pavement, furniture crashing, more glass breaking. Marcus buried his face in her shoulder. Linda covered his ears, her own heart pounding so violently she thought it would explode. It felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The sounds outside grew louder, then quieter, then stopped completely. Sirens wailed in the distance, approaching rapidly. Linda remained frozen, too terrified to move. Her phone buzzed again. It's over. You're safe. She didn't believe it immediately. Not yet. But slowly she stood, unlocked the door, stepped cautiously into the cafe. The place was devastated. Tables overturned, chairs broken, more glass everywhere. The front door hung off its hinges. Daniel stood in the middle of it, breathing hard. His vest was torn. Blood trickled from a cut above his eye. But he was standing. Tony was on the ground near the door, hands restrained behind his back. 2 police officers stood over him, reading him his rights. 4 of Tony's men were lined up against the wall, handcuffed. Sarah walked over to Linda. You okay? Linda nodded, unable to speak. Tony's finished, Sarah said. Police have been building a case against him for months. Extortion, assault, racketeering. They just needed someone to file a formal complaint. We ensured they got multiple complaints. Linda stared at her. He's going to prison? For a long time, Sarah confirmed. 10 years minimum. Linda's legs wobbled. She sat down on one of the few chairs still standing. Marcus ran to her, and she held him tightly. Daniel approached, wiping blood from his face. I'm sorry about the cafe. Linda looked around at the destruction, the broken furniture, the shattered windows, the overturned counter. Weeks of work, thousands of dollars she didn't have. It's gone, she whispered. Everything's gone. No, Daniel said firmly. It's not. Linda looked at him, confused. Daniel pulled out his phone and made a call. Yeah, it's done. Tony's in custody. The place is a mess. He paused, listening. Yeah, I'll tell her. He disconnected and looked at Linda. How much would it cost to repair this place properly? Really repair it? New windows, new furniture, new equipment. Linda blinked. I don't know. Maybe 50,000. Probably more. Daniel nodded. We'll cover it. Linda's breath caught. What? The club, Daniel said. We'll repair it. All of it. And when we're finished, this place becomes our official stop. Our spot in Riverside. I can't let you. You don't have a choice, Daniel said. But his tone was gentle. Your son saved my life. You stood your ground when most people would have run. That means something to me. To all of us. Linda's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Daniel said simply. Linda's cafe is destroyed, but Daniel has a plan to rebuild it, better than before. But renovation takes time, and Linda has bills to pay. How will she survive the next few weeks? And what surprise does Daniel have planned for Marcus? 3 weeks later, the cafe was unrecognizable. New windows, new doors, fresh paint on the walls. The old cracked booths were gone, replaced with sturdy new ones. The counter had been rebuilt, polished until it gleamed. New appliances in the kitchen. New lighting overhead. Diana stood in the middle of it, tears streaming down her face. Daniel walked in, wiping grease off his hands. He'd been there every day, working alongside the other club members, measuring, hammering, painting. "What do you think?" he asked. "It's beautiful," Linda whispered. 52,000, Daniel said. Every member contributed. Linda shook her head, overwhelmed. "I'll never be able to repay you." "You already did," Daniel said. "Your son saved my life." He gestured around the cafe. "This is just us returning the favor." Linda walked to the counter, running her hand along the smooth surface. "What happens now?" "Now," Daniel said, "you open for business. This becomes our spot. We'll bring people in, truckers, travelers, locals who know we're here. You'll have more customers than you can handle." Linda looked at him, hope and fear mixing in her chest. "And Tony?" 12 years, Daniel said. "Minimum. He's finished." Linda exhaled slowly. "It's really over." "Yeah," Daniel confirmed. "It is." Marcus ran in from the back room, eyes wide. "Mom, they installed a new television in the break room." Linda laughed, wiping her eyes. "Did they?" "And a couch," Marcus said excitedly. "A really comfortable one." Daniel grinned. "Figured you needed a place to rest." Linda looked at him, at this man who turned her life upside down and then rebuilt it stronger than before. "Thank you," she said quietly. Daniel nodded. "You're family now. Both of you." He walked to the door, paused, and looked back. "Grand opening next Saturday. We'll be here." And then he was gone. Linda stood in the center of her new cafe, Marcus at her side, and for the first time in years, she felt genuinely safe. The cafe reopens next week, but Daniel has one more surprise for Marcus, something that will make the boy feel like he truly belongs. And Linda is about to discover that her new family comes with unexpected benefits. 1 year later, the cafe was thriving. Saturday afternoon, every booth filled. Truckers, locals, bikers. The sound of conversation and laughter mixed with the sizzle of the grill. The smell of coffee and bacon hung in the air. The neon sign outside, the one that used to flicker and cost $50 monthly, now burned bright and steady, a beacon visible from blocks away. Linda moved through the organized chaos with practiced confidence, refilling coffee, taking orders, smiling at regulars who'd become friends. She wore a new apron, crisp and white, embroidered with the cafe's unofficial motto that someone had suggested, "Where the road feels like home." She looked different, lighter. The exhaustion that used to live permanently in her eyes was gone. Her movements were assured, purposeful. She laughed more, worried less. She didn't live in the cramped back room anymore. 8 months ago, Linda had signed the papers on a small house 4 blocks away. 2 bedrooms, a yard, a front porch where Marcus could sit and do homework while watching the neighborhood kids play. It wasn't large. It wasn't fancy. But it was theirs, truly theirs. The cafe had made it possible. Business had tripled since the Iron Riders made it their official stop. Word spread through the biker community like wildfire. Riders from other clubs started appearing, respectful and hungry. Travelers heard about it on social media and travel blogs. The place that used to scrape, by now had waiting lists on weekends. Linda had hired 2 part-time cooks and a full-time waitress. She'd expanded the menu beyond basic diner fare, upgraded all the equipment, and paid off every single debt she owed. And she'd stopped paying protection money, because the only protection she needed walked through her door every day, wearing leather vests with Iron Riders patches. She wiped down the counter and looked up as the door opened with its familiar chime. Daniel Reeves walked in, followed by Sarah and 4 other club members. And with them, holding Daniel's hand, was Marcus. Linda's heart swelled with emotion. Her son looked happy, genuinely confident. He was 10 now, noticeably taller, his face losing some of that little boy softness. But his smile was the same bright, genuine expression she loved. And he was wearing something new, a small leather vest. Not a full Iron Riders cut. He was far too young for that, but it had a custom-designed patch on the back, a guardian angel with motorcycle wings spread wide. Underneath, embroidered in silver thread, the kid who saved a life. Marcus ran to the counter, practically vibrating with excitement. "Mom, look what they gave me." Linda's eyes immediately filled with tears. She reached across the counter and touched the patch gently, reverently, feeling the quality of the craftsmanship. "It's perfect, sweetheart. Absolutely perfect." "Daniel said I'm an honorary member," Marcus announced, bursting with pride. "He said I earned it." "You did earn it," Linda confirmed, her voice thick with emotion. "You were brave when it mattered most." Marcus beamed, then ran off to show the cooks in the back, his vest flapping behind him like a cape. Daniel slid onto a stool at the counter. "He's a good kid, Linda." "He is," Linda agreed. She poured Daniel coffee without asking, black, no sugar. She'd memorized how everyone took their coffee by now, knew their preferences, their stories, their lives. "Thanks to you," Linda said sincerely. "Thanks to all of you." "Thanks to your son," Sarah corrected gently. "We just followed through on what he started." Linda set down the coffee pot and looked around the cafe, at the people laughing in the booths, at the gleaming counter that reflected the overhead lights, at the pictures on the wall. New ones, taken over the past year. Group photos of the club gathered out front, Linda and Marcus standing with Daniel at the grand reopening. A shot of the cafe at night with the neon sign glowing like a promise. "I never thought it could be like this," Linda said quietly. "A year ago, I was barely surviving, counting pennies, living in constant fear. Now," she paused, searching for the right words. "Now I'm actually living." Daniel smiled warmly. "That's what happens when you stop running." Linda nodded thoughtfully. "I wanted to run. You know that, right? That night when you told me to stay. I thought you were absolutely crazy. I thought staying would destroy us completely." "But you stayed anyway," Daniel observed. "Because Marcus trusted you," Linda explained. "And I trusted him." "Smart kid," Daniel said, taking a sip of his coffee. Linda laughed softly. "He gets it from his dad." She paused, her expression growing more serious. "Actually, he gets it from all of you. You've been more family to us this past year than we've ever had." Rachel grinned. "Damn right we have." Marcus came back out carrying a plate of fresh fries, climbing onto the stool next to Daniel and starting to eat while talking enthusiastically about school, a science project, and whether the Iron Riders could visit for career day next month. Daniel listened patiently, asking genuine questions, treating Marcus like his words mattered, like he was important. Linda watched them, her chest tight with gratitude she could barely express. A year ago, she'd been alone, terrified, trapped in a cycle of fear and survival she couldn't escape. No hope, no future, no way out. And then a 9-year-old boy had whispered 6 words to a stranger. "Leave immediately. It's an ambush." 6 words that changed absolutely everything. Later that evening, after the dinner rush had settled into a comfortable lull, Linda stepped outside for fresh air. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. The sound of motorcycles rumbled in the distance, more club members arriving for the weekend gathering. Daniel joined her, leaning against the wall beside her. "You ever think about that day?" Linda asked. "The day Marcus warned you?" "Every single time I walk through that door," Daniel said honestly. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if he hadn't spoken up?" Daniel was quiet for a moment, watching the sunset. "Yeah, I'd probably be dead. Or worse, disappeared, tortured for information about the club." Linda nodded slowly. "And we'd be gone, living in some cheap motel in Sacramento, or maybe on the streets. Probably would have lost everything anyway." "But you're not," Daniel said firmly. "You're here. You're safe. You're building something that genuinely matters." Linda turned to look at him directly. "Why did you really do all this, Daniel? The truth." Marcus looked up and caught her eye across the cafe. He smiled, that beautiful, innocent smile, and Linda smiled back, tears threatening to spill over. Daniel stood, raising his coffee cup high. "To the kid who saved my life, and to the woman who had the guts to trust a bunch of bikers when every instinct told her to run." The others raised their cups in unison. "Hear, hear." Marcus's face turned bright red, but he was grinning from ear to ear. Linda's eyes filled with good tears, the kind she'd rarely experienced before. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon completely. The neon sign flickered on, bright and steady and beautiful. Motorcycles lined the entire street, and inside the cafe, laughter and warmth filled every corner, every booth, every space. Linda looked around one more time, at the life she'd built, at the people who'd helped her build it, at the son who'd started it all with a single whispered warning. And she thought about how strange and wonderful life could be. How one moment of pure courage could ripple outward and change absolutely everything. Marcus had whispered to a stranger, wearing an Iron Rider's vest. And that stranger had whispered back in his own way, "You're not alone anymore. You never will be again." Because sometimes, the people who save others are the ones who needed saving most. And sometimes, on a dusty road in Riverside, a 9-year-old boy and a biker both found something they'd been searching for their entire lives. They found home. If this story touched your heart, tell us. Would you have had the courage to speak up like Marcus did? Would you have trusted a stranger to protect you like Linda did? Share where you're watching from. You're part of this family now.